I am Vinnie Tortorich. Folks, your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed. Chris, I know we played that song last week. By the way, folks, that's Chris Shaffer over there. Yeah.
No Sugar Tonight secretly becoming my theme song, apparently.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, Chris. People have written to me, Vinnie at VinnieTortorich.com. Is that how they get me? Is that the address they get me on? Because Debbie sends me the cards and letters. I call them cards and letters, but it's emails. People, I did a post. I put up a post on my Instagram that had, it was like an old post. I reposted it. It was when I took a megaphone and yelled at a building because I was going to do a documentary. And
that's not just a Thursday for you?
No, usually I yell at buildings without megaphones, like a Karen. I just start yelling, "Why are you here? Why?
Who built you?
Why? A man built you and I hate men," or whatever the deal is. Anyway, people, I did a thing about that. And people were like, "Hey, man, thanks for the song and thanks for, lonely feelings deep inside. Find a corner where I can hide. Silent footsteps. The whole deal about that song, it's how people feel about addiction to sugar. And it's almost like you can't talk about sugar addiction, right? People are writing to me. They're doing it on Instagram. I saw it on Twitter. A few people wrote to me on Twitter. I know people talk to you about it. Yeah, it's a real thing, right? It's how people feel. And it's the addiction that you're ashamed to talk about because, come on, what are you, a pussy? You can't have a little sugar. That's the way people feel. Even when I had Dr. Drew on this show, I said, "Drew, they're saying now that, sugar lights up the, hypothalamus just the same way as cocaine." He was like, "Well, not really exactly." I said, "Yeah, but Drew, we don't give sugar to kids we don't give cocaine to kids at birthday parties." And he goes, "You got a good point," right? That's the truth of the matter, Chris. We look at sugar as being this benign substance. Anyone can have it. It makes you feel good. It's your birthday. Here's sugar. You just won the Little League baseball game. Here's sugar. Every ad when I was growing up, "Hey, you just did something. You just, had a solid BM. Here's a Coke," right? Literally, that's what it was, right?
Me just over here thinking about the sugar and caffeine in Coca-Cola causing you to have that BM.
Yeah.
Versus, you should know by now how my brain works, Vin. This is not.
Yeah, it's you read up when I said that, and I was like, "Wait a minute, Chris is going to come up with something."
If it happens right after you drink coffee, does it also happen right after you drink Coke? Probably.
With all of my sugar addiction, I've never been a sweet drink. Like, I don't like sweets in the form of drinks, meaning I've never been a soda guy. And I guess maybe that's why I'm not a beer guy. Although I love gas in my water. I like soda water, right? Or Pellegrino, which is odd, right?
I don't think it is. So carbonated water is not nearly as big of a thing I guess now it is with the flavors and stuff. But here, every restaurant that I go to is with or without gas, right? If you ask for water, They say, "Do you want carbonation or not?" And I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that if you like it, you really like it. Like Michelle will not touch it. Yeah. Right. It's too astringent. Is that the word that I'm looking for?
Astringent is one word, but it's just imposing for people.
Yeah. It's annoying. And it's funny when you start drinking different things, right? Like Pellegrino is a very light carbonation, but then you get some of these that are like a really hard carbon. I don't know how else to describe it other than like a soft and hard carbonation, right? Yeah, there's light fluffy bubbles and punch you in the face bubbles.
Yeah, Gerolsteiner is like, oh my God, my throat is on fire from the carbonation, right? It's like,
is that German carbonated water?
Yeah, I think, they do everything, Italians.
It sounds like you're yelling it, so you can just assume that it's German, right?
Yeah. So, it's weird. People either like it or they don't. But it's funny that I'm a sugarholic, except when it comes to sodas. It's like I didn't even like the only two sodas I found interesting when I was a kid was original Dr. Pepper in the bottle and root beer. There was something called Dad's Root Beer when I was a kid. Now, here's the thing about Dad's Root Beer. I didn't want to have it unless it was a root beer float. So it had to be creamy root beer. It had to have a scoop of vanilla in it, right?
So root beer is another one of those things. So there's Barks, which is like a harder flavor, and then there's the A&W, which is that soft. So where was Dad's? Because if you're mixing it with ice cream, it's coming out.
Dad's was because Barks was only Mississippi and Louisiana, right? Barks wasn't what it is now. It was a local brand down there, and Barks was like drinking root beer, right? You didn't put that in because Barks came in a bottle, like a glass bottle, kind of like the 7-ounce or 8-ounce Dr. Pepper. It's like, so that's how Barks came, right? Dad's came in like the big plastic thing, and that's the one you did ice cream. That's what my grandmother would do it with. Like she wouldn't waste a Barks. So, and we didn't have a lot of money, so I think that was the difference, right? So
all right. So this is probably a local thing, but did you guys have birch beer? I know this is a total derangement from what we were talking about.
No, not at all. I've never heard of the birch.
All my Pennsylvania people will get me here, but that's another one of those like harder things. Didn't go very well with ice cream, and it's a very specific flavor that not a lot of people like. But that was the same thing, right? You would never put that on an ice cream float. That was a drinking soda versus a ice cream float soda type of a thing in
right.
PA. Yeah.
So for me, it was more about the dessert, and I just didn't really like to drink the drink. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. Before we go on, Chris, we just a quick ad here. We are back in stock on everything at purevitaminclub.com. And folks, if you've suspended your subscription and you were waiting for us to get back on track and all that kind of stuff, we're there, right? Wouldn't you say we're there, Chris?
We are, and we have more on the way. We have more than we thought we were going to have, which is the opposite of the problem that we've had in the past, which is a good thing. Cannot complain at this point. I'm loving where everything is headed. It looks like we finally wrestled the bear at least a little bit, and we're starting to move back in the right direction.
Yeah, we're moving into the positive direction now with the company, right? And it was like putting out fires. Bonzo, we're good. We're good, Pumpkin. We were putting out fires for what? The better part of 2 years?
Yeah.
It's been like 2 years. And at first, I wasn't, I was letting someone else run it. And it wasn't until I started going, wait a minute, there's something amiss here. I need to get involved in my own company. And that's when I uncovered a lot of stuff. And Chris was there to help. And there was a moment when, everyone and their brother said, this is going to cost you a lot of money to turn this around. You might want to consider just cutting your losses and go away. And I said, you know what? I have a lot of people who paid me a lot of money for these subscriptions, and I will not let them down. I would rather fail trying than just to go, oh, okay, this is what normal business people do. I'm not normal. That's right. I'm abnormal. So that's what we
drinks Dad's root beer, right?
I haven't had that since my grandmother was still alive the last time I had Dad's root beer.
Well, she was Italian, so that was like 6 weeks ago. That's fine. No.
I wish. I love that woman to death. Anyway, yeah. So the vitamins are back. You can go to purevitaminclub.com, check it out. And really soon, we're going to have a new website up, right, Chris? Because with everything else, we've been working on a new website.
As if we didn't have enough going on. Yeah. And I don't know if it will be up by the time that this episode comes out, but it should be up
soon. Yeah.
by the time the next Wednesday show is out. So even if you don't have anything that you need to add, just go check it out. Let us know what your thoughts are. If you have feedback about the difference, the other thing would be, hey, send an email to chris@purevitaminclub.com and say, hey, I hate the way that this page looks, or, like the subscription thing is better or worse. Hey, I would rather have that, Vinny, than 6 months down the road have somebody go, hey, I can't figure this thing out, and realize that it's been a problem for a lot of people. So I'm not saying I'm going to listen to everybody, but if it's something that comes up over and over again,
I do like the fact that you're putting it out there, because what used to happen was I would call my company and go, hey, people are asking about this or complaining about that. And they would say, yeah, everyone's got an opinion. And it's like, no, it's customer first. What happened to customer first? I built everything on customers, right? And you guys are saying, screw the customers? No, I'm not going to have it. And that was the beginning of the end for a lot of people at that company. Last night, Chris, last night, I woke up yesterday morning with a cold. I don't know if you can tell. My voice is wonky right now. Very scratchy throat, sneezing and sniffly and the whole thing. Somehow I got the rhinovirus, right? I have the winter cold. Probably picked it up at the gym. It's the only place I go to outside of my house. And but I knew I had to be in Washington, D.C. to meet one Miss Anna Vocino. And we had a steak dinner together. I hadn't seen Anna since I left LA. We've never been in the same room since 2019. And we had a nice meal together. We did not like the steakhouse we went to. We couldn't believe that when you can make a much better steak at home and you go out and you paid $1 gazillion for the steak, you go, wait a minute. I could do way better at home. What are you doing?
Right? So are we talking a local place or a chain place, like a Capitol Grill?
You know what?
We don't have to name and shame them. I'm just curious.
No, you know what? I'm going to give you the name. If you go to Washington, D.C., the STK Steakhouse over in the Marriott is not a place you want to go to. If you want to go to the bathroom and wash your hands before you eat, you have to leave the steakhouse, go into the Marriott, go past the Starbucks, and then you get to wash your hands. So by the time you get back, you'll get your 10,000 steps for the day.
And your steak is cold because it's arrived and the plate has cooled off.
Well, is that, and it's like, come on, man, what else? And it's like, they had loud kind of disco music in there. Anna was the first, I heard it and it's like, I'm not going to complain. Anna was like, what the hell is this music? I was like, I don't know, but it's not steakhouse music, right? Why do you have to have music at all? And then the tables look like something you would see, it's like a wooden table, but it was crappy tables, no tablecloth on it, nothing that you would see in the steakhouse. It was like, can we get a tablecloth? We're about to pay $1 gazillion for a piece of meat. And then the meat comes and it's not what you paid for in quality, right? So, folks, look, I call them the way I see them. If you go to STK Steakhouse in the Marriott over in Washington, D.C., good luck. You're going to get what you pay for. Well, you're not going to get what you pay for, actually.
So I'm laughing, Vinny, because their slogan is "Not Your Daddy's Steakhouse," and they pride themselves on their About page for having a unique, vibe-driven approach to fine dining with a different DJ to create an infectious, high-energy atmosphere. So the About Us section is not about the meat, right? I lived 5 years in Texas, right? I don't call myself a Texan. Texans would not call me a Texan, but I went to enough steakhouses there to know that if it's like a brown wooden building with pictures of cows on the wall, that's probably a much better place to get a good cut of steak than somewhere that is pitching themselves as the nightclub steakhouse experience. That just doesn't sound like fun to me. I don't know. It's not the vibe I'm looking for when I'm trying to down a 16-ounce steak.
Yeah, it was not, I didn't know what it was. It was like, but I should not be paying this price for this, is all I can say. Right. And that was that.
How was the bookstore? You guys were at Bold Fork Books, I think, right?
Bonzo, what do you, Bonzo, I can't let you stay down here if you're going to whine whenever I'm not touching you. Okay. We went to Bold Fork bookstore. And I got to tell you, Chris, I was very impressed. Bonzo, you got to stop. I swear to God, I'm going to kick you out
Bonzo
of
was
here.
not.
Bonzo. So, Bonzo. So went to Both Forks. Everyone there was great. Had a great time, right? It was a packed house. I didn't expect a packed house. I'm going to be honest. I was like, oh, a couple, who do we, how many fans could we possibly have in Washington, D.C.? And luckily the place wasn't bigger because people were like right up on us because that's how many people they packed in there. And it was an intimate thing. Like they're right there. Right. Well, honey, come get him. He's down here. Please. Mommy's calling you, Bonzo. Go see mommy. I think she's got a treat and everything. Here he comes, son. Okay. So it was an intimate thing. Anna and I drove away knowing I wasn't feeling well last night. I got there and the whole thing. I drove away going, I want to do more of these. Right. Now, usually when I go do a talk or something, it's, some insurance company paying me a shit ton of money to go talk for 45 minutes at a convention. And, it's like wind up toy, put me on stage, go. Right. And it's a business opportunity. It's money in my pocket. Right. This is not that. I want to do more of these. And Anna called me today. I was like, I wonder if Anna would be interested in doing more of these. Anna called me and said, did you enjoy that as much as I did? And I said, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Everyone was engaged. About 60% of the people there was not our audience.
So just random people who had found Anda's cookbooks, or?
Well, they advertised it on their end. And I guess Both Forks is a store of books for cookbooks.
Which, by the way, that's just proof that you can make a living doing pretty much anything. If you have not just a bookstore, but a culinary bookstore.
Well, okay. The owner, because I asked him, I said, how did this come about? And the owner of the bookstore wrote a column for like 20 or 30 years for one of the big newspaper organizations about chefs and critiqued books and the whole thing. So she started the bookstore about 5-6 years ago. And they bring people in, people like Anna. So they promote it. And the 60 or so % of people that had no idea who we were, they stayed around longer after, getting their book signed. And it feels weird because there were a couple of people knew I was going to be there. So they brought My Fitness Confidential to sign. But most people would say, hey, would you mind signing Anna's book? And it's like, yeah, but I was signing on the opposite page. I didn't want to steal Anna's spot where you're supposed to sign. And it was really kind of cool because it's fun talking to people who know nothing about what we talk about. No sugars, no grains. So we were just chatting through this right before this podcast. And here's my original thought. There's a guy named Kurt Lapierre. And I've been threatening to go to North Dakota for a long time. Now you would say, come on, Vin, North Dakota is not a place where anyone can get to. If you want to get there, you get there. People found a way to get to DC, right? People took the train in, they did all kinds of stuff. I'm thinking about maybe doing it in North Dakota. And these aren't going to be meetups. It's going to be a thing where you have to, just like this, we're not going to make a lot of money. As a matter of fact, Anna and I will lose money on these deals. The reason I'm bringing up Kurt Lapierre is he knows people over at Shields, Shields Sporting Goods. Maybe we do a thing in conjunction with Shields where they sell tickets, these $25, $35 tickets or whatever, to come spend an afternoon or evening with Anna and me. And at least that will cover some of our travel expenses. It's not going to put money in our pockets, right? It's not a money-making deal. But if we can not even get close to breaking even, but, at least get our plane flights paid for, that would be a cool thing, right? And we could do more of these. And I said, Anna, how many? She goes, if we did 3 or 4 a year, just connect with like an REI or a Shields or, a Dick's Sporting Goods or something, or a coffee shop. I don't know, maybe in conjunction with Starbucks or so. I don't know. We could just go do this and talk to intimate, just small groups of people who may not have ever heard of us. Right? So that's what we're thinking about doing.
I like it.
Yeah. It might
I'm
not
willing
work.
to bet, Vinny, that there is a listener like our buddy who just had a beautiful baby named Vinny, who has a space pretty much anywhere that you guys would want to go that would be interested in packing some people in there.
Where is he? He was in North Dakota. No, he was in
He's in South Dakota.
South Dakota? Okay. Maybe it's South Dakota. Maybe it's his restaurant. Kurt might have to travel a little bit. But what I'm saying is, I want to try this one time and see what happens and see if we can draw a crowd. And like I said, it was a tiny space. I thought 10 people were going to be there. There were probably, I don't want to exaggerate, 50 crammed into a little tiny bookstore. Right? And everybody was interested. Right? They told us we would be out of there by 8:00. Well, Anna was supposed to start signing books at 8. We had to cut the questions off at 8:30. They said, okay, we can't be here all night. We cut, and that's why I hung around to answer questions privately while Anna signed books. Right? Throat was sore, not feeling well. I was like, as soon as I walk off of the stage, I am out the back door. Nope, stay for another hour, at least. Right? I didn't get home until after midnight last night.
So what you're saying is you had an overpriced steak, but you did not stay in a $500 hotel room last night.
No, not when I can be in my bed in 2 hours. All I have to do is dodge about 200 deer on the 29 on the way home. And then I was good to go. Yeah.
Love it.
All right, Chris, what else you got on your mind over there?
So, Vinny, I have just a little news feed set up, and I love throwing things at you that come out of nowhere. And I had something from NPR pop across my feed, and I know how much you love hearing summaries of studies, but the headline is what grabbed me. And the headline was, "Hey, meat eaters, your gut health can rival a vegan's." For all of the things that I've heard about veganism, that's not a claim that I've heard often. Is that something you're familiar with, that vegans have better gut health than everybody else? Is that something you've heard commonly thrown around?
Yes, I have. Because vegans will say everything about veganism is better for your health. So when you're me and you've been living in this world forever, vegans will tell you that, oh, you broke your leg? You need to go vegan if you want that leg to heal right. Right. So, and, I think we talked about it with the egg argument about a week ago, right? 1 egg a week, according to vegans, and you could go look this up on a vegan website. 1 egg a week is enough to cause type 2 diabetes, right? And an egg has no sugar whatsoever.
What was it? I think we said it was a half a gram of carbs, right?
Yeah, a half a gram. So in 1 year, you would end up with 25 total grams of carbs. I'm sorry, 26 grams, total grams of carbs, or 25 and a half, probably, if you ate 1 egg a week. But according to the vegans, that's enough to cause type 2 diabetes. Now, here's where my problem is. It's in National P Public R Radio. National Public Radio. They do not run ads. Chris, do you know where NPR get their money from to pay for it?
Viewers and listeners like you, aka the U.S. government, kind of like PBS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the government pays for this, which means that you're supposed to give a neutral view of things, right? They will run vegan stuff all the time. They will never give meat any credit, ever, for anything, period. So does that sound fair?
So does it count as a neutral view if the headline is complete clickbait and the body of the article contradicts it?
Can you expound on that? Can you read something from the article?
So by that headline, the assumption that is generated, and correct me if you came to a different conclusion than I did from that headline, but they're saying vegans have the ideal gut health. If you eat meat, you need to think about your gut health and really pay attention to it, right? You need to do something to get it to the level that the vegans are at.
All right, so
Does that make sense?
Chris, give us the actual headline again.
Hey, meat eaters, your gut health can rival a vegan's.
Okay, so what they're saying is that meat eaters can, that's close to veganism, or they can rival. What are you taking from that?
So it's a here's how article, right? So they're like,
Right.
here's how you can do it, implying that a vegan would have superior gut health to anyone who eats meat, not carnivores, but
Right.
omnivores, right? People eating real food.
So if you're eating vegetables and you add in chicken, fish, beef, pork, what have you, wild meat, boar, well, I guess that would come under pork. Boar is like pork.
Yeah, it's a wild pig.
Venison. Yeah, it's a wild pig. So, all right. So, yeah, they're saying if you add anything in, then you're screwing up your perfectly good vegan diet. Is what we
Right.
should.
Your gut health is not as good as it could be, but there's a solution to it. Right.
What is that solution, Chris? Is it in the article, in the body of the article?
So it is. They are covering a study that came out of Nature. The ironic thing, Vinny, NPR, no ads, right? That's kind of their whole thing.
Yeah.
The entire body of the article is littered with promotions for another article about prebiotic soda. Right. So as you scroll down, there are two different links with images trying to get you to go to their other article, which is essentially sponsored by the prebiotic soda companies, right? I'm not saying they paid for it, but that's essentially what they're doing, is pushing that. And I would be curious. I may do a little bit of digging after we get off to see if they have some affiliate links or something in there. But what they did is they analyzed the gut health of stool samples, talking about BMs. We brought that right back around, of 21,000 people in the US, UK, and Italy, to figure out what people's gut health looked like. And they said they knew which participants were vegans, vegetarians, or omnivores. And they had a detailed dietary information about what these people ate for a couple of weeks at a time. How did they do that, you might ask?
Wait, clear. You need to clear something up. They were able to tell who was who by looking at their shit, or they knew ahead of time?
They knew.
So there was no double-blind study. No, they knew from the get-go who was who.
Yes.
Okay.
Whose poo was whose? Yes.
All right. So just based on that, you need to, there's a bias already, right? The reason scientists have to do double-blind studies is to relieve themselves, because good scientists know that we have a bias no matter what on any subject. It can be religion, politics, whatever you have. Even football, you watch football games, right? There was a call in a college game a couple of weeks ago. I didn't see the game, where it was clear that there was a penalty. It was clear that the referee is looking right at the play. The problem is that referee played for Texas at one time, and did not make the call on the Texas team, right? So no matter how fair you want to be, we're human. We're flawed. We're greatly flawed. So that's why we do not just blind studies, but double blind studies. We set up a placebo group because even people in the study can't be fair if they knew whether they were taking the placebo or the other side. So just going in, this is already flawed. Take off, Chris.
So they knew because they used a self-reported dietary tracker and then analyzed their poo samples to see if there was any animal DNA found in it. And if you reported that you were a vegan and then didn't have any animal DNA, they classified you as a vegan. If you reported yourself as a vegan, based on what I'm seeing here, and did have some animal DNA, so maybe, I don't know, your dog walks by while you were pooping in the cup, they took you out of that group and put you in the omnivore group, right? And so not only do they know exactly what they're looking for, but it's based on essentially self-reported data.
Right.
So they don't know if you're a good omnivore or a McDonald's eating omnivore. They just know that you said, I had a hamburger or
Right.
I ate some beef this week, right? And essentially what they're saying is, hey, what they found is the more plant-based foods people ate, so the more plants, the more gut bacteria they had that are linked with better health, such as inflammation and a stronger immune system. Perhaps not surprisingly, these good bacteria were the hallmark biome of the vegans.
Okay. So I've often said this about the blue zones, right? People go, oh, the blue zones, they eat more vegetables, therefore they're healthier. If you look at, I'm going to take Loma Linda, right? This is a very, very wealthy place in California, right? So wealth usually means you're eating better. It's just a fact, right? People with a lot of money, and if you went to Loma Linda, this is where the area where the Nixon Library is, so you can guess the type of people that are living in that area, and they're very, very wealthy. They're not going to be eating fast foods all the time, right? On top of that, it's a large, not Mormon, but Seventh-day Adventist. By and large, they don't drink, they don't smoke. Again, self-selecting group, right? So we have wealthy people who generally don't eat junk food, who in general don't drink, don't smoke. They live a little longer than other people, right? Therefore, they go, wait a minute, these people eat more vegetables, therefore they're healthier. They don't take into account no fast food. You probably can't even find a fast food restaurant in Loma Linda, to be honest with you. Now, Chris is probably looking at, yeah, there's McDonald's there. Yeah, I get it.
No, I'm just curious now. So there is an In-N-Out and a Baker's, but nothing else apparently.
Okay, so right there, you're not seeing McDonald's, you're not seeing Raising Cane's, you're not seeing Popeyes, you're not seeing, Taco Bell. On down the line. I used to ride bikes through Loma Linda. I used to go down there and train with a buddy of mine, and I would be on a bike for 10, 12 hours a day. We would train for these ultra events. Trust me, it's an area like you've never seen. Another blue zone, Sardinia, right? The most centenarian men. And when they ask the Sardinians, do you eat a lot of meat? They say no. What do you eat? We eat a lot of vegetables. Well, that's not true. They don't count all of the dried meats they dry. They don't count the lardo. Do you know what lardo is? Look up Italian lardo.
It's just fat, isn't it?
Pretty much. It's a fat ball made from animal fat. They eat lardo. They eat cheese. They eat eggs. They eat dried meat, but they don't count that. They ask them what they eat for dinner. And for whatever reason, a lot of these people, by the end of the day, they're so sick of eating all day long, they have a salad and go to bed, right? So they go, what do you eat? We eat a salad. We go to bed. We drink some Sardinian wine, some rudimentary table wine. For a long time, they tried to say this wine was the reason they lived longer, because there's literally sediments of grape peels in the bottle, right? This crazy wine that they make themselves. You can't even buy it, right? And the other thing they don't take into account is Sardinia is full of hills. It's a hilly area. And these wops like to walk. I guess you can't call them wops because they have papers. They just never came here. I'm a wop. They're just Italians. So they they walk everywhere. We know that walking is synonymous with good health. We know that. And they're not just walking on flat areas. They're walking up and down hills. They need to go to a grocery store. They walk. Right? I've been to some of these regions. I've never been to Sardinia, but I've been to areas in Italy where they keep beagles. Why? Because they hunt rabbits and they eat rabbits and they walk and go hunt these rabbits, and they walk everywhere. Everywhere you go.
Fast food.
Yeah, that is actual fast food. Thanks, Chris. I'm going to be using that the next time I go rabbit hunting. But what you have to understand is these people, every time I'm in one of these villages around Italy, the one thing you can count on in the village is a butcher, right? Everyone's got a butcher in the village, and they all go there every day, right? So they're eating a lot of meat. But the blue zone says, oh, no, they said right here they eat salad, so they're vegetarian. Nothing can be further from the truth. So when you try to do these studies, you're going to always get, you get a vegan? Okay, you also, my friend Alexandra Paul, right? Well, I can't say we don't hang out and talk anymore, but we were friends back in the 90s. I love Alexandra. I'm sure if we got together, we love each other still. She's a great woman. Alexandra Paul is one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met. She's a staunch vegan, PETA. She's gone to jail for PETA. She's one of those, right? Real radical. Just like me, she's never smoked a cigarette in her life. Unlike me, I started drinking alcohol when I was like 35, but I'm almost a teetotaler. You know that about me. She's never had a drink. And just like Alexandra, neither one of us has ever taken a drug outside of a medication that a doctor's given us. No illicit drugs. Alexandra, if you get her to put stuff on paper, she looks healthier, right? Because she doesn't do anything and by the way, she swims like there's no tomorrow. So if Alexandra is in that group, right, she's not the regular vegan.
You're saying she's not an Oreo eater? Is that what
I doubt one has ever passed her lips. So she's doing everything right. And she's been an athlete her whole life. People know her as an actress, but she's very athletic. And that's what we connected on, right? She was a triathlete and did all the stuff, right? So those people are just healthier. Does that make sense?
It does. And you're going to see that in a lot of these studies, right? You're going to have that inherent bias. This one specifically, getting past the problems of knowing exactly what you're looking at and coming at this with saying, okay, these bacteria specifically in a vacuum are exactly what leads to better health. They're not just correlated with it, but these are that, right? They come out and say vegans, definitely the vegan one. And then the very next sentence, Vinny, does what a lot of these articles do. And it says, oh man, for those omnivores, their gut microbiomes tended to have more bacteria associated with meat digestion. Duh, because they're eating meat. But they also had bacteria linked to inflammatory bowel disease and a higher risk of colon cancer. That's the bad news.
That's the meat people?
Omnivores, right? So anybody who they didn't classify as vegan, anybody who had animal DNA in their poo and or said that they ate meat during the time that they were self-reporting what they ate.
Now, again, the guy who eats at Taco Bell and at Popeyes, right? Meat lovers pizzas from wherever. All of this stuff falls into the meat eating category. And that's where the problem lies when they do these studies. They don't take the Sean Bakers and the Dr. Ken Berries out, right? Those people are the Vinnies of the world. I'm just third person myself.
Third person yourself, yeah.
Third world person myself. No one's looking at me going, wait a minute, this guy is 62 years old and is perfectly healthy, right? No one's doing that because I don't go to a fast food restaurant. Ken Berry does not go to a fast food restaurant that I know of. Neither does Sean Baker. But we're not in that study. You go to In-N-Out Burger, you're going to have mayonnaise on there. You're going to have other crap on that thing. You're going to have crap. You go to McDonald's, you're going to have crap on that burger. It's not going to just be the burger. Even the buns are not real fresh bread. There's crap in the bun. I mean, everything about it is not good. And unless you go to McDonald's, unless you get a quarter pounder, you might not even be getting real meat. I think the quarter pounder is the only one that's 100% real meat, right? The rest of them are some other version of byproducts, meat.
Pink slime, I think is what they call it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's all included in this group, but they're not telling you that.
It gets better. Further down, as always happens in these things, Vinny, study is one of the largest of its kind. And the finding is important because it shows that eating a wide variety of plant-based foods is more important. This is a direct quote from someone who analyzed the study, somebody from the University of Illinois, who is a nutrition and microbiome researcher. Said, this finding is really important because eating an array of plant-based foods is more important than adhering to a vegan or vegetarian diet pattern. Omnivores who were eating a large diversity of vegetables were actually quite similar in terms of having the same level of good microbes compared to vegans.
So now they're contradicting what they found earlier?
So vegans have it. Some omnivores have bad things. But if those omnivores ate real food, they basically looked like vegans.
Yeah.
So how do we get to the headline of, oh, by the way, you might want to modify your diet, which is essentially what that's implying, to say, hey, if you're eating vegetables along with your meat, your gut biome's basically going to look the same.
My mom is one of those people that's guilty of reading the headlines now. And this woman was an educator her entire life, but she will tell me she's guilty because she'll call me and I'll never forget the straw in the nose of the sea turtle.
Yeah.
And then California took that one thing and said, hey, paper straws, right? And we don't know if someone just stuck a straw or, photoshopped a straw into we don't even know if that was a real thing, right? And try to make that happen again in history. You can dump every straw in the world in the ocean. Let's see if that happens again. It's not, right? Even if it did happen, right? And my mom was like, oh, yeah, you can't use straws. It's like, number one, I'm not sure why anyone uses straws to begin with, unless you're in the hospital and you're on your back. Even when I was in a body cast, right, and they would give me the bendy straw, I didn't like it. I didn't like sucking on a straw. I would tilt my head up enough and just drink the water from a glass, right? And my mom was like, why don't you just use a straw? I was like, Ma, you bring my coffee to me in the morning. You don't put a straw in that. And she goes, yeah, I never thought of it that way, right? It's like, so I'm drinking the coffee. I'm able to get the coffee in my mouth without a straw. I could do everything else without a straw. I don't need the straw. I hate straws. I don't understand why anyone needs a straw, but You go to a restaurant and the first thing, would you like a straw? Right? So I don't know why we need them, but I don't know why we saw one photo. It's kind of like what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago on the show. You know, someone said, oh, you can blow a car up by talking on a cell phone while you're putting gas in it. Right? And that became a thing. And I said, if it was really a problem, they would have security at every gas pump around the country. Wouldn't just be a little thing written on the thing saying, hey, don't talk on your cell phone. By the way, do you see those signs anymore? No, they're gone. They're gone.
We recorded that episode. We talked about the gas stations and airplanes.
Right.
That weekend was Michelle's birthday. We jumped on a plane. We went up to the coast for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Vinny, I have not heard it in 20 years, but during their in-flight safety announcement, the reason they gave for putting your cell phone in airplane mode was that it could massively interfere with the equipment used by the pilot to take off and land. And I was like, I haven't heard it before or since for probably 15 or 20 years, but we recorded that. I left here, and no sooner did I get on the airplane 3 hours later, they read that as an announcement, and I died laughing because it's just made up, right? It was a theoretical thing. There's no proof that it ever happened, just like this study. And Vinny, this was published in Nature and reported on by NPR. Before we've debunked this at this point, but I've seen it going around a few different places. One last thing that I want to throw out to you. They said at the beginning, 21,000 people. How many of those people do you think were vegans?
21,000 people. I'm going to say, let's call it 25% of them. I'm going to say about 25% of them were vegans.
So that would be 5,200, something like that. 656.
Wow. Well, so, okay.
So we've just forgotten basic statistics, apparently, because if we're trying to do a comparison of two groups and say that all things are equal,
right,
then the sample sizes should be somewhat equal.
In the ballpark.
Am I missing something? So they had 656 vegans, 1,088 vegetarians, and 19,817 omnivores.
Okay, right there. You know, forget about everything else we said to debunk this. Now it's just completely out the door, right? It's that's just nuts.
So we're talking, what is that? 3% of the population of the study were vegans, and we're backwards engineering this to say this is what it should be. So let's look at these 656 people, 3%.
Yeah.
And compare that to all of the variation that you would see in humanity across 19,000 people, and then come to the conclusion that there's not really that much of a difference as long as you eat some vegetables.
Yeah.
How does this get funded? That's what I would like to know is like, okay, so what university or what government grant did you get to conduct this study where you said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to study the poop of 656 people and compare that to the poop of 19,000 people and see if we can figure out if vegans have better gut health. Answer, not so much, as long as they eat some plants.
But the headline didn't really say that.
And that's what I'm seeing everywhere. Hey, vegans have better gut health. You have to eat more plant-based. And that's the other thing that's interesting. That whole terminology shift, right? They're saying eat more plant-based foods. And then you look at the list of foods, and those are not plant-based foods. They are plants, right? They have a list of things like butternut squash, avocado, broccoli, kale, blueberries, eggplant. Those aren't plant-based. Those are just plants.
Yeah.
So what, like, maybe just eat more plants? Like, then at least I could agree with some part of the article and the study, right? Like, hey, maybe there is something here. Maybe we should study more than 656 of the 21,000.
Yeah.
But also, we're seeing a correlation across the entire study population where if you eat some plants along with the meat, you get a lot of that indication.
Yeah.
Okay, still not very useful because that's kind of like Italian grandma knowledge, right? Or just you can't have your pudding if you don't eat your meat. But also, like, the entire purpose of this study disproved itself. The article contradicts itself. And then if you actually look at the study, which was published in Nature, it's just made up. Like I'm not a scientist analyzing the study itself,
Right.
but I know enough about statistics to say we can't compare 3% of the population to the rest of the population and then say, oh yeah, there's a little bit of variation here.
Yeah, there's a rivalry here. Chris, we're going to make that the final word. Here's what I need you to look up for next week. I got a lot of people coming back on me because I compared Ozempic to sunscreen, saying that sunscreen was a bad idea. And a lot of people saw my post. I think 35,000 people or so saw it on Instagram, including my good friend and neighbor, Angie. We'll call her Angie because, well, that's her name. And I was standing outside with my dog who was taking a poop earlier, and Angie walked up and she goes, I got a bone to pick. And I went, here we go. I hate when the neighbors start listening to the podcast, but they do. And she goes, the sunscreen, and Angie's husband's a doctor, right? And she's like, listen, I have cancer on my face, on my lip, and the whole thing. She didn't go, what about that? She said the same thing a lot of people said to me on Instagram. What about the mineral-based sunscreens? Because, I wear big, like Stetson cowboy-looking hats, and I have all kinds of hats with brims that go all the way around because my dad has had lesions taken off the top of his ears. I've had stuff, I'm bald on top, so I've had stuff, burned off the top of my head and on and on and on. And Angie was showing me her lip, and, she's got cancer in there and the whole thing. So yeah, if you are susceptible to those things, you have to protect, but anytime you use a chemical, any kind of drug, as a matter of fact, there's a plus and a minus to it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying don't take a medication if you need it. If you need it to cure one thing, realize that nothing comes without a risk, including sunscreen. But there might be better options, and Chris and I will come back at you guys next week with an episode where we're dealing with sunscreen, and Chris is going to be very busy trying to figure out the best versions of putting stuff on your face and whatever. And you don't have to slather a kid head to toe with sunscreen. That's not what we're talking about. We're trying to figure out if you need to put something on your nose or your face, or if you're redhead and freckled the way Chris is, you might need something. Who knows? But we're going to try to find the healthiest versions of that, right? You can't be afraid of the sun. That's number one. But number two, if you have a problem, we have to have a way to help you. I'm not trying to be an asshole on this podcast. I'm trying to help people. And that's what we're going to try to do here next week. So, Chris, that's your assignment.
Sounds like fun.
And I'm going to do a little research myself over here in between everything else. PureVitaminClub.com is up and running. Everything is in stock. Go there right now. We are trying to win you back. It's that simple. I'll put my ass on the line to keep this company running. Don't make me a liar. Help me out here. Let's get this thing going again. Chris, Chris is busy answering every email that comes in. I got a song here for the end. Oh, Chris reminded me of something. Before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieTortorich.com. Click through the banner. It puts coal on the fire, gets my train down the track. I'm sure Chris won't know this song, but he mentioned living in Texas for a while. So we're going to play one from my good old friend, Mr. Waylon Jennings.